Hi, fifth grade. Today we are going to read a couple chapters from our Purple and Tan books. We are also going to do a quick page on subject and predicate. Now, I know that subject and predicate are brand new to us, but I promise if you watch the rest of this video, I will give you all the information you need, and it will turn out to be really easy. So let's open our Purple and Tan books to chapter 1, which starts on page 2. It is called The Rise of Early American Civilizations. Now, while we're reading chapter 1, in your book, there are 3 questions that you need to answer in complete sentences. Now, I put those 3 questions up on the projector right now, but those 3 questions you do need to answer in your own words in your notebook. The Rise of Early American Civilizations. Our understanding of the history of humans living and working together begins in Africa, more than 1 million years ago. Over time, humans began to migrate and eventually inhabited 6 continents: Africa, Asia, Europe, Australia, and the 2 Americas. For many thousands of years, early hunter-gatherers traveled from place to place. They fished, hunted animals, and gathered wild plants. Between 12,000 and 5000 BCE, some groups of people established more permanent villages. Often these village-based societies relied on farming, raising their own crops for food. Some learned to domesticate animals. Over time, animals were used for more than food in some regions. They helped people plow and fertilize the soil. They supplied milk and provided wool for clothes. As people settled down to farm, their lives changed. People learned to irrigate fields. They developed ways to store food. Populations grew. Between 4000 and 2000 BCE, towns and villages in various places developed into cities. People constructed buildings and worshipped gods. They made pottery and wove cloth. The city dwellers chose leaders and developed laws. Some people governed and others served. Civilizations were born. Civilizations developed from Africa to the Americas. The earliest civilizations arose in fertile river valleys in Africa and Asia. These civilizations flourished along the banks of the Nile, the Indus, the Yellow, the Tigris, and the Euphrates rivers. By 1000 BCE, new civilizations arose in the Americas. These early American civilizations are called pre-Columbian civilizations. This is because they developed long before Christopher Columbus's first voyage to the Americas in 1492. 3 of these pre-Columbian civilizations were the Maya, the Aztec, and the Inca. Mesoamerica and the Maya and the Aztec. Mesoamerica, or Middle America, was home to the Maya and the Aztec civilizations. This region lies north of the equator in an area called the tropics. It includes a portion of present-day Mexico in North America and part of Central America. It occupies much of the isthmus that joins the continents of North and South America together. The present Central American countries of Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and northern Costa Rica are all part of Mesoamerica. Mesoamerica has very diverse landscapes, including dry coastal deserts and wet inland rainforests. The Yucatan Peninsula is surrounded by water on 3 sides. It lies between the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean Sea, and was home to many Maya. Warm, humid rainforests cover the southern part of the peninsula. Its lush vegetation supports animals as varied as jaguars, snakes, bats, monkeys, toucans, and quetzal birds. The northern part of the Yucatan is drier and has no rivers, only lakes and swamps. The Yucatan's thousands of deep cenotes supply fresh water to the area, water needed in order for settlements to develop. Maya descendants still live there, living alongside the ruins of these ancient civilizations. The Aztec created a magnificent empire with cities under one central government. This empire began north of the Yucatan Peninsula in the Valley of Mexico and extended across much of the central Mexican area. Surrounded by mountains and volcanoes, it was a land full of wildlife. This wildlife is still there, but only ruins of pyramids mark the landscape with the remains of the Aztec civilization. South America and the Inca. The Inca civilization began high in the Andes Mountains of present-day Peru. It grew to include parts of Ecuador, Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. The landscape and climate vary greatly across this enormous stretch of land. Deserts and warm valleys lie beneath the frigid snow-capped peaks. Llamas and alpacas are native to its mountain areas. These long-necked animals were domesticated to carry heavy loads and provide wool. Cougars and chinchillas are also share in this habitat, with a wide variety of birds, amphibians, and fish. Clues to past civilizations. Archaeologists have discovered much of what we know about the Maya, the Aztec, and the Inca. Archaeologists study the remains of past civilizations. They survey the land where ancient people lived, test the soil, and take photographs. They also map out areas to excavate or dig for the artifacts. Archaeologists use shovels, scoops, brushes, and sieves to search for evidence of past human activity. Flaked stone, ceramic shards, bones, and textiles all tell a story. Spanish letters and records also provide information about early American civilizations. Why were the Spanish in the Americas? Starting about 500 years ago, they came in search of riches. They were looking for gold and silver, spices and silk, adventure and conquest. Spanish conquests in America. Hernan Cortes and Francisco Pizarro, who were distant cousins, were two early Spanish explorers. They sailed on separate expeditions from Spain to the Americas in the early 1500s. These Spanish conquistadors, or conquerors, were both interested in more than riches. They wanted to establish colonies for the Spanish king. They brought with them advanced weapons, new animals, and unfortunately, also devastating European diseases. Cortes conquered, or took control of, the Aztec Empire in present-day Mexico. Pizarro conquered the Inca in present-day Peru. The Spaniards imposed their language and religion on the native people. The Spanish wrote about their early experiences in the Americas. As you explore these chapters, you will learn about the history of these three pre-Columbian civilizations: the Maya, the Aztec, and the Inca. That's the end of Chapter 1. Please look at the 3 questions that are asked for you to write in complete sentences on your paper. The first question is 1. What might have caused early people in North America to want to move to Central and South America? This was on the very first page of our chapter, especially looking at the map. Number 2, why were the early civilizations called pre-Columbian civilizations? They talk about that in at least 2 different places in Chapter 1. Number 3, it says on page 4, there is a sentence about the Yucatan Peninsula. Based on the sentences on page 4, what does peninsula mean? Now we're going to read Chapter 2. Again, you have 3 questions to write in complete sentences. Chapter 2, the Golden Age of the Maya. Desiré Charnay was a French archaeologist who visited the jungles of South America in the 1800s. He wrote below in his journal, "The rain is incessant. The damp seems to penetrate the very marrow of our bones. A vegetable mold settles on our hats, which we are obligated to brush off daily. We live in mud. We are covered in mud. We breathe in mud. The ground is so slippery that we are often on our backs as on our feet." Imagine slipping and sliding through mud all day long. Imagine constantly swatting at mosquitoes. Imagine pit vipers and tarantulas resting in trees right over your head. Imagine constant heat and humidity. Mud, poisonous creatures, and muggy weather were all part of Charnay's experiences in the rainforest. Charnay visited Central America after reading a travel book written by John Lloyd Stephens and illustrated by Frederick Catherwood. He was fascinated by the book's illustrations of ancient Mayan ruins. Catherwood drew pictures of vine-choked temples poking through the clouds. His drawings of carved masks looked like real people. Stephens and Catherwood portrayed abandoned cities, swallowed up by dense forests. Their book captured the imaginations of people from all around the world. Who were these Maya? People wondered. A culture flourishes. The Maya were one of many groups of people who settled in Mesoamerica. They formed architectural villages at least as early as 1800 BCE. Over time, they established a civilization. As many as 5 million people inhabited an area that stretched from the highlands of Guatemala to the plains of the Yucatan. Between 250 and 900 CE, writing, religion, and art flourished. In certain respects, this era was the golden age for the Maya culture. The Maya were not ruled by a single ruler. The Maya lived in city-states, scattered across the considerable distances. Some of the city-states were larger than others. Each had a powerful lord who governed his own city and surrounding areas. The city-states both traded and fought with one another. Maya society was divided into classes, with lords in the highest class. Well-educated priests were among the noble or highest classes. Both kings and priests lived in palaces close to the city center. Powerful nobles usually lived in larger houses. Craftsmen lived in smaller houses that were often further away from the city center. Farmers lived next to their fields that were even further away. So if you think of their class system, it goes kings and priests, nobles, craftsmen, and then farmers. Pyramids, temples, gods, and sacrifice. Maya city-states were centers of both government and religion. Each center had some unique architectural designs. However, all centers had stone pyramids and temples. Some of the pyramids served as burial monuments to honor dead kings. Temples occupied the top level of the pyramids, purposely close to the heavens and gods. These temples were reserved for rulers and priests. Pyramid temple complexes often surrounded a central plaza where public ceremonies and festivals took place. Religion was important to most aspects of Maya life. The Mayas' belief in gods and goddesses helped them explain the mysteries of life itself. They believed that gods controlled everything. The gods were responsible for the rising and setting of the sun and the phases of the moon. They were certainly responsible for floods and droughts as well as sickness and health. The Maya gave thanks for bountiful harvests, a cured disease, or victory in battle. They offered sacrifices or precious gifts to the gods. Sacrificial blood, both of animals and humans, was a common offering. Kings, sometimes called holy lords, were in charge of hosting sacrificial rituals and ceremonies. Toward the end of the Maya's golden age, the city-state, Chichen Itza, served as an important Maya center. Chichen Itza is located in an arid region of the northern Yucatan Peninsula. The Maya believed that Chichen Itza's well of sacrifice was the home of gods who controlled the rain. The Maya offered sacrifices to the rain gods. They did so because they believed their fields would be watered. This well continued to serve as a sacrificial site for centuries after Chichen Itza's decline as a major Maya center. Trading from highlands to lowlands. Trade routes followed rivers, seas, and roads across the Maya region, connecting these indigenous people to one another. Cities were hubs of commerce where people shared ideas and traded goods. The Maya used a barter system for exchanging daily necessities. People in the lowlands traded food, cotton, and jaguar skins for coastal salt and dried fish. People across Mesoamerica used obsidian, a volcanic glass from the highlands, for both jewelry and tools. Wealthy Maya valued precious gemstones and the brightly colored feathers of rainforest quetzal birds. Feeding city-states. Maya farmers worked hard to supply food to the city-states. Rainfall and soil varied throughout Mesoamerica. The Maya found clever ways to meet the challenges of their diverse landscapes. Some lowland areas received heavy rain from May through December, followed by drought from January through April. Because of this inconsistent rainfall, the Maya developed ways of redirecting and reusing rainwater. They created canals in the lowlands. They built raised earth platforms above the canals and created wetlands. Aquatic plants helped keep the water clean and provided shade for the fish in the canal. The fish, in turn, provided both food and fertilizer for their fields. In highland areas, the Maya cut terraces into the slopes of mountains. They practiced multi-cropping on this flat land, planting and harvesting the land multiple times throughout the year. Their crops included beans, tomatoes, squash, chili peppers, and pumpkins. Maize, or corn, was the main food throughout Mesoamerica. In forested areas, the Maya used a technique known as a squash and burn. They slashed or cut down trees and then burned the whole area. They then planted new crops. Ashes from the fire added nutrients to the soil. After several years, the crops used up the nutrients in the soil. The Maya then repeated the process in another area. The Maya also gathered tree crops. Fruit trees thrived in the rainforest. The Maya enjoyed the bountiful fruit from the breadnut tree. Similar to apricots in appearance, breadnut fruit has highly nutritious seeds. The Maya ate these seeds or ground them into flour. The Maya also used many rainforest plants for medicine. Some Maya hunted game in the forest, including deer, rabbits, and other small mammals. They raised turkeys and dogs for food. They raised stingless bees for honey, which they used to sweeten food and drinks. In coastal communities, the Maya ate fish and turtles as well. It is important to remember that the Maya were not the first civilizations to live in Mesoamerica. The way they lived was often very similar to the ways others in the area lived. The Maya did not invent the pyramids, nor were they the first to practice writing. Instead, the Maya often improved upon practices borrowed from other cultures. An important ball game. The Maya played a ball game called Pacatak that had religious significance. Nearly every Maya city had at least one ball court. Enclosed by parallel walls, the rectangular courts varied in size. Some were nearly as large as a modern-day football field. The game of Pacatak was played with a solid rubber ball that weighed as much as 8 pounds. Players kept the ball in the air with their knees, hips, shoulders, and forearms. Thick, heavy padding protected them in the fast-paced game. Rules varied among city-states. At Chichen Itza's court, the object was to pass the ball through a stone hoop. In some city-states, players were sacrificed to the gods at the end of the game. It's possible that the game symbolized the passage of the sun across the sky. This was believed to be an important daily task performed by the gods. Painted mural at Banamuc. Life in a royal court. This mural was painted on the temple wall at Banapac in southern Mexico. It shows the members of the king's royal court lived lives of luxury. Rulers grew wealthy from trade among city-states. The mural depicts how members of the royal court lived and dressed. Loose-fitting clothing was typical of all social classes. Noble women wore beads, pendants, and earrings made of precious jade. Noble men covered their heads with feathered headdresses made of quetzal plumes. Only the rich and powerful wore fancy clothes and jewels. And that's the end of chapter 2. Question number 1 for chapter 2 says, page 9 talks about the class system of the Maya. There are 3 different classes. That should say there are 4 different classes. Who is the highest, next, and then lowest class? Number 2, page 11, talks about the Maya barter system. Based on the paragraph, what does it mean to barter something? And number 3, why was the Mayan sport of Pacatak important? The very last page you have to do today is the subject and predicate page. Once you are done with your reading, if you want to work quietly with someone else on the subject and predicate page, that's okay. You do have to cut and glue in all 2 of these pages today. I know that they're in the packet, there are a couple extra pages. Just recycle them. We don't need them anymore. We've already glued them in. So for the subject and predicate page, the directions say, for each sentence, draw a vertical line in a red colored pencil separating the subject and the predicate. Underline the subject in blue, underline the predicate in green. Now, we have talked about nouns and verbs all through the year so far. Subject is a fancy word for the noun or all of the nouns in a sentence. It could be something as simple as the word craftsman, or it could be something as complex as Mrs. Spalding and her class. That is still all a subject. It is all nouns. So please remember that subject, the blue color, is the noun, all the nouns. Now, predicate, once you get to the verb, the predicate is the verb or the action plus everything that comes after it to the end of the sentence. So your red line should go in between the noun, the last noun in the sentence, and the verb. The verb is underlined in blue, and the noun is underlined in blue, and the verb is underlined in green along with everything that comes after it. If you have any questions, I'm sure I can help you tomorrow, or the sub can help you as well. You are welcome to work on the subject and predicate page with a friend. Please get both of these pages, your guided reading, as well as the subject and predicate page, cut out and glued into your notebook by the end of class. If you finish early, you're welcome to look up our vocab terms for Technology Tuesday, as well as do some silent reading. Please keep the class environment pretty quiet today, but if you would like to whisper to someone next to you, that is okay too. All right. Thank you, 5th grade.